So these ancient Indians, and Buddha was one of them, believed in Indra is the god of heaven, essentially, and the king of the gods. And I think what Amaravati is the name of Indra's paradise, which has beautiful scented trees and the tree of the universe. Indra's consort, Indrani, is there. There are these beautiful flowers like jasmine and honeysuckle, roses. The fragrant groves are occupied by the apsaras, who are divine damsels like the muses, playing a variety of instruments and making music and dancing. And this is Indra's paradise where he lives, right? And what Buddha, I think, thought is that each of us needs to become Indra. There's no point like projecting it onto there up in the clouds, like in Savoy up on the mountains is Indra's paradise. No, we've got to build it here. And so his idea of enlightenment is you internalize the lightning bolts through intellectual breakthroughs, enlightenments, and we become Indra. We become immortal. I think this is what Buddha was doing, and I think he saw that as possible. And his immediate yogic guru was Kapila, who was from that same town where he was brought up, Kapila Vastu. Kapila was the founder of Samkhya Yoga and a great genius who lived a couple of hundred years before Buddha. So Buddha would have grown up hearing about how Kapila is such a great yogi and reached enlightenment. And then when he grew up, he said, I want to do that. I'm off to the forest to reach enlightenment. I'm going to do the Indra thing. So I think this is all lovely stuff. And we should have, contests for reaching enlightenment instead of fighting over who's got more nuclear weapons. That's childish stuff. And the chariot, which Indra uses to get about, is a symbol of will. We have to apply goodwill to get this world sorted. We need the energy of Indra and Thor to get anything done and to make this world better, and we have a duty to do that. So anyway, I love Indra. He's a great god. He's kind of, unfortunately, what they call Hinduism, which isn't really the real McCoy. They don't honour Indra. They honour Brahma as the creator, Vishnu as the sustainer, and Shiva as the destroyer, but they've forgotten Indra. It's the fourth of the quaternity. Really, there are four gods in Hinduism, and Indra is the fourth, and I would say the most important. He's actually the king of the gods. And that's why Modi and some of these Indians don't understand the difference between right and wrong. They've forgotten Indra, and I think Buddha would back me up on this. Yes. Okay, that's that. Exciting. Now, the last one, my one, on a gentler kind of note, because these are very strong masculine gods, that, powerful figures, right? This is the two of water, and all he does is die. Poor old Tammuz, or Adonis, he just falls in love. And, he has to die off as his big thing, because he loves so much that the world can't contain him. And he's the two of water in the suit. And he stands for love and for connectedness. And he goes right back to Dumuzi, a Sumerian god, who was the lover of the goddess Inanna. And he stands for the sort of the young man who dies early, the kind of John Keats figure, the poet. And in those parts of the world, they would have a Tammuz garden or an Adonis garden. The women of Syria, because the worship carried on, they'd grow an Adonis garden, a pot of lettuces, which then died off in the heat of the hot summer. And they would take that as a symbolic death and weep for the dead Adonis. but then he would be reborn. So the festival of mourning the death turns into celebration when he's resurrected in the following spring. So this story of Adonis and Tammuz is deep down in the psychic origins of Christianity, because it's the same people that, saw Christ as the Son of God who has to die, but then is reborn. And I think what Christ taught, like Adonis, is the way of love, which ultimately triumphs over death. It's because the life force is stronger than death. And there's some of the oldest poetry in the world is in honour of Dumuzi. And it's one of the earliest. I think our ancestors worked out, yes, death is terrible, nobody likes it, but then a new generation come into being, and life carries on. And it's weird, isn't it, that great-grandson looks exactly like the great-grandfather. They figured out reincarnation, I think, quite early on, that life doesn't die, it gets reborn in some mysterious way. So I think that's the wisdom of this card. So, I mean, and that's what we still don't realise, that wisdom. Male egos particularly, but also women's egos. When they get really like, I have to win, I'm going to win. Putin is stuck in an adolescent pre-Tammuz modality of, I've got to win in Ukraine. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll blow them up. I'll blah, 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 And so is Zelensky and the West. No, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to win. We're going to do everything. So you've got these adolescent pre-Tammuz people not realising that the most important thing is to surrender, is to give up. Simultaneously, that's the tricky bit of diplomacy. That's where the French come in. When I was a kid and used to occasionally have little playground fights and things, the deal was you both give in at the same time. Because you can't say, I surrender, and then he goes on fighting. Because, it's not on. You have to agree, okay, when I say 3, we both stop, right? 1, 2, 3. Okay, over. What we need is somebody to make that rule for these big playground bullies and say, look, let's stop fighting, put all the guns down, let's go to diplomacy and have a meeting in Paris and discuss this. In French, like all true diplomacy should be done. So anyway, that's my reading of these 3 cards. They're interesting. We've got the male warrior gods, very strong, wonderful, I love them, don't get me wrong. But then we have the little one that dies, has the secret of liquidity and peace. Okay, any questions?
You mentioned that is also the god of connectiveness. Can you tell a little more about this? Because this is connectiveness with others, between us ourselves, or with the divinity, or what?
I think all. He's the god of fertility, because that's why the women worshipped him as the god of gardens. And as I learned from watching that film about how trees communicate with each other and plants, everything in nature is interconnected. And so we pick up on energies from physical, from touch, from feeling, from scent, and plants do the same. There's nothing that's separate in life. Everything is interconnected. Even the air we breathe. I mean, I've read somewhere that in every breath we take, there's a couple of atoms that Jesus used to breathe. Mathematically, it's just the case, right? And so this is amazing. So we're all interconnected. And that's what water is, which is the secret of life. Water is what makes life possible on this planet. With no water, we die. And that's why Jesus is the 10 of water in this card set. This suit is the suit of love. It's cups in the normal tarot, which is about interconnectedness and love, ultimately, which is, what is love? Well, it's the acknowledgement of our interconnectedness. whether friendship or emotional marriage type stuff. Talking of which, by the way, I've come across a really brilliant book just doing some research this morning about going back to one of my interests. It's a book about the history of French Freemasonry in the 19th century, and it's about male friendship. It's an academic in America has studied why was Freemasonry so famous and popular in France in the 19th century. And this guy, can't find the actual title, but I can email it to people, has done a detailed study of friendships in the Masonic lodges, which were all male at the time, and how that was really important for their social life and their bonding, and these friendships lasted a lifetime, and that was the strength of Freemasonry. It's really interesting new study that's come out. I'm going to try and order that book. And that, I think, is an example. Oh, and by the way, the Freemasons, in a sense, go back to Tammuz and Dumuzi, because in the Phoenician form, the Grand Master of the Masonic lodge that built the Temple in Jerusalem had to die, Hiram Abif. In the third degree of Freemasonry, the candidate has to die. They lie down in a coffin and have a symbolic death. As I'm not giving away Masonic secrets here, that's what happens in the lodge, right? You don't actually die, but you have to be prepared to die, because you're about to become, really important Masons. So symbolically you die and go in the coffin. And that's what happened to Hiram Abif, who was the builder of the Temple of Jerusalem. And so that's what these Masonic lodges do. They enact this story, which is the Dumuzi story, still to this day. And the point is to learn humility and love. If it's good enough for Goethe and Beethoven, should be good enough for us. That's what I would say. But, okay, any last questions here?
Perhaps about those wings on left and right.
The tusks.
Oh, what
It's the elephant's tusks.
Oh, even
And
this.
that's his... Oh, those ones. Oh, no, yes. Yes, I think they're flags.
Oh,
The artist, it's a sort of representational artist. A Swiss chap did this. Rather beautifully done. And I think he based it on a model where these were flags alongside the elephant. But he didn't draw the whole thing, he just did a representation of it.
okay.
But if you look up Indra, there's lots of pictures of him available.
Okay, but I don't have to look for symbolic meaning or something.
I don't think so. No,
Okay.
I mean, you can find one if you want.
All right.
Everything is a symbol of everything else. Yes. I just want to end with a poem, but before we do that, I want to just flag this up. I've been watching La Bible dévoilée. It's a brilliant French language film, four episodes, with a brilliant archaeologist called Israel Finkelstein. And he's going around the sites in Israel where the Bible came from. And he's exploring the biblical story and seeing what does it show on the ground. Is the Exodus true? Is there any archaeological evidence for this? Is the Jacob story true? And it's really brilliant. He's basically saying, this is quite a famous and controversial archaeologist in Israel, one of the top ones, that no, the Bible isn't history. The Bible isn't true. It was made up years later, after the events it pretends to describe, in about the 7th century, 6th century BC. And the reality was that Israel, which was based in the northern part of Palestine, was the more important power than Judah, which was in the south. Jerusalem was not the capital, it was not an important city. It was a village in the time of David and Solomon. They were at best little tribal chieftains. The real centre was up north in Samaria, where Israel's capital was. And then we know the king lists, they're important. The reason the Bible doesn't elevate them to importance is because the Bible was written by emigres living in Judah after Israel had been conquered by the Assyrians. And they were trying to say, no, Judah's the most important place. And therefore they created this sort of fabulous mythological past for it, which didn't exist. Anyway, it's very interesting and very well researched, and you get to see the sites. One of the sites, Beth Shan, was called Nisa in the old days, and it's where Dionysus was from, very close to where Jesus lived and was brought up in Nazareth. And archaeologists have discovered this site because Dionysus was also one of these kind of dying and being reborn divinities, another water god who loved wine and love. And I think Jesus probably identified with him. He knew the stories, which is why he turned the water into wine. He came from the area, because when he grew up, all this stuff was common knowledge. You know, there were pagans, there were Jews, there were different forms of Jews, there were Samaritans, some of his best friends, and there were Egyptians. That's another thing Israel Finkelstein shows, is how important Egypt was. At the very time when the Exodus is supposed to be happening, actually Egypt still ran Palestine. They had fortresses full of Egyptian sculptures and things. So the Exodus didn't happen like it says. It was probably just a small band escaping somewhere, and it got written up later as a really big thing. Anyway, interesting stuff. And it's why the humanities are so important, because we can discover new stuff and see history in a different way. And that's where skepticism comes in, because why should we, if we're going to be good Zionists, shouldn't we be fighting for Samaria to come back as the supreme capital? Maybe it's not Jerusalem at all. Maybe that's not where God should be. It's up in Samaria. And of course we can't know for sure, so let's be skeptical about this, which means we don't have to kill each other. Maybe the Samaritans are right. You know, maybe the Jews are right. Maybe the Egyptians are right. Maybe the Greeks are right. Let's all just agree to be skeptical and to love each other, and let our egos surrender to the water which connects us all. Hey, voila, that's what I would say. I just wanted to plug up Finkelstein's great work. He's a great man. And I'm going to finish with a poem. Yes. Ha. Well, this is the one I opened. This I wrote in Canada in 1980. And it's about Golgotha. So the hill in which Christ was crucified and died. It was a time in my life when I was reading the Bible fully for the first time, properly, and studying it, for months and months in detail, and learning Greek to read it and things, the New Testament. I have gone wandering into the night and seen beauty revealed in front of me, like a burning flame of blue light in a glass niche, where the essence of time converged into the transcendental freedom beyond all forms. Wherever I go, I shall always treasure this beauty, which has been bequeathed through grace. In your infinity of space, accept me, guide me, pierce me beyond levels and limits, daring onwards into new being. In the essence presence of time's moment storehouse, of apocalyptic actuality, in the ever becoming. Love shall not leave us blind, but gift us sight supreme, beyond all knowing. Love is the voice which called in dreams from youth, beckoning to that place where all the mists of illusion have ascended into spring's aching beauty for real birthing. Yet what hill collects peace, gaping, amidst robbers, openly. Can mind bear now its own birthing? Golgotha,
Hi.
1980. Okay, thank you. We'll finish there, I think.